Hi, welcome to 5 Minutes of Torah with the BI Rabbi. I'm Rabbi Adam Stein. If you watch the news, or you listen to the news, or you read the news, you know that a big topic of the past week or so was the discussion of, and also the reaction to, Donald Trump's use of certain words to describe Haiti and countries in Africa. Words he may have said, may not have said. Now, one debate, and I can't believe this has actually been front page news for several days, has been over whether Trump said poop hole or poop house when referring to these countries. Now, I say poop, even though I know many news organizations chose to use the actual swear word used by Trump, but that's because this is a family series of videos that we're making for you from Beth Israel. But also, I'm so used to saying poop around our house because we have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Well, shoveling aside for a moment sorry for the use of that word. Shoveling aside for a moment the amazing fact that seasoned journalists and politicians are spending their time debating whether the current president of a major nation referred to Africa's 54 sovereign states as, by a vulgar term, more fit for, as he would say, the locker room. What fascinated me today was that Trump's Department of Homeland Security announced that Haiti, people from Haiti, Haitians, would now be banned from applying for visas that are given to low-skilled workers. Now, Rabbi Infeld did say we'd get a lot of sermons out of Trump. But what fascinates me here, actually, is the doubling down or the entrenching of positions that's so common among politicians. It's sort of like I'm not going back on my controversial position. I'm going to celebrate it and go even further. And this is not just Trump. It happens all over the place. It happens in Canada and BC when we have elections and debates, in Europe, South America, Africa. There are political clashes everywhere you look. It's a natural thing with ideological debates. Certainly in Asia too, of course in North Korea. But I do have to say, just for a moment, the news in the past couple days of North Korea and South Korea competing under the same flag in the Olympics coming up next month, that was wonderfully heartening for me. I hope it's a bit of hope. But to go back to our topic, you may be asking, what does this entrenching of positions or doubling now, what does this have to do with our Torah portion this week, Parshat Bo? So we're in the middle of the 10 plagues, really in the middle. The first 7 were last week, the last 3 are this week. And the 10 plagues they're very exciting. They're exciting for kids at the Seder, maybe throwing ping pong balls around to represent hail or something like that. For adults, we get to go like this with the plagues from our cup to our plate. I will mention, by the way, do not go like that afterwards with the wine and the grape juice. It's like you're eating the plagues. Yucky. But the theologically difficult part of the plagues, and it is pretty tough, comes here. There's several times when God says to Pharaoh or to Moses, he says, I'm hardening Pharaoh's heart. Or I hardened Pharaoh's heart, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart. He said it several times, even before the plagues he says this. And it's tough for us, especially in the modern era, because what could this mean but that Pharaoh wanted to repent after the first plague or two, but was prevented from doing so by God? It's a big challenge in the text. Was Pharaoh forced to be so mean just so that more plagues would come? Now our Parsha this week actually seems to suggest that. And the Parsha starts right after the end of the plague of hail, and it says, Then the Lord said to Moses, Go to Pharaoh, Bo el Paro, for I have hardened his heart and the hearts of his courtiers, in order that I may display my signs among them. And that you may recount in the hearing of your child and your child's child, how I made a mockery of the Egyptians, and how I displayed my signs among them, in order that you may know that I am the Lord. Okay, so God hardened Pharaoh's heart and that of his courtiers, so that God could display his signs among them, so that he could show them who's boss. That phrase, displaying signs and wonders, so the Egyptians may know God's might, it's actually used several times, including the warning before the plagues. It's quite troubling. But the other reason God gives isn't that much less troubling. The one that, so when we retell the Pesach story at our Seder every year and tell our children about the Exodus, they'll be able to tell them how God made a mockery of the Egyptians so that we would know that God is God. That's theologically troubling as well. Now, our videos are meant to be short, our videos that we do for you each week, usually about 5 minutes. So I'm not going to attempt to give a definitive answer to this theological conundrum. I'm sure I couldn't satisfy most people anyway, even if I did have an hour or two. It's been vexing us for centuries. and I'm sure it'll continue to do so. But I will refer to one pretty famous line of reasoning from our traditional commentators, and it might help us connect back to recent events. Shemot Rabbah is a collection of midrashim, rabbinic explanations of the Torah. And in this particular midrash, it's about hardening Pharaoh's heart, and it asks, why did God harden Pharaoh's heart in the first place? Since God hardens Pharaoh's heart, the midrash says, heretics could argue that Pharaoh had no way of truly repenting since Pharaoh was a puppet of God. Meaning, people trying to attack us Jews physically, or in this case theologically, might say, hey, your God didn't even give Pharaoh a chance to repent. Your God was controlling him, just like a puppet. Now, considering Shemot Rabbah was compiled in the early medieval period, that fear of the other and of nations around us who are really treating us badly, that's quite plausible. So then the Midrash explains that God tried to reach Pharaoh several times through the first 5 plagues, but that Pharaoh took no notice. Therefore, God resorted to hardening his heart. This explanation fits with another one that describes Pharaoh as hardening his own heart by doubling down and pushing through those first several plagues and continuing to refuse to let us go. So Pharaoh, I think, was the consummate politician, the leader of Egypt, enslaving us when he thought we, a minority in Egypt, would grow too large. He had a god complex. The pharaohs of Egypt were thought of as gods themselves. He entrenched himself in his stubbornness even after many plagues. Now, I'm not going to compare Pharaoh to Donald Trump. That analogy breaks down in all sorts of ways. But perhaps we could learn something about politicians in general from Pharaoh, that the tendency to double down and dig deeper into their own positions is a common trait and not necessarily a good one. So my prayer for us this week is that we can use this parasha as an opportunity to grow ourselves and to be open to other positions and to reflecting on our own. Shabbat Shalom.